Halifax Sports Talk, Andrew and Dayton with you to get you ready for the weekend. And we've been seeing so many home and homes take place in the QMJHL so far this season. And well, why not one more to get going here this weekend? Charlottetown and the Halifax Mooseheads. We'll go over that matchup. And of course, we got to touch on one more time the Loney Bowl, the Huskies taking on the X-Men, of course, at Husky Stadium, St. Mary's versus St. FX. And that one should be a bit closer than the matchup the Huskies had last week against Acadia. How are you, Dayton?
Not too bad, not too bad. Not in the original setting, as you can see on the road, but the show goes on. I'm excited for this home and home with the Islanders. As my buddy says, the Mooseheads are going to the Sandbar City,
Ooh,
so
okay.
that's good. It's over on the Sandbar on the island, so yeah,
I like
good
that.
hockey over there.
I like that. How were your travels? Any issues at the airport? I know Pearson's, kind of everyone's enemy, and everybody's heard Ryan Whitney's story about Pearson. Nobody really likes that airport. How did it treat you?
No, it was actually Halifax. I was going through customs and I grabbed my basket came through the scanner and I picked it up. And as I was picking it up, I guess my belt and my glasses fell off and they actually got stuck under like the rollers and it stopped the whole
Oh,
and I was like, oh no, I didn't even realize some lady was like, excuse me, is that your belt and glasses? And I was like, yeah,
man.
happens.
Oh, man. So you're in town doing commentary. Is that right? Or
Yeah,
announcing?
some in-house announcing. Yeah.
Announcing. Awesome.
Bonjour.
Awesome. Yeah. The perks of being bilingual. You got to love it. And hopefully that sets us up for a couple interviews where I'll just sit here and smile and you can have the conversation with a couple of French athletes. But yeah, the home and home. Look, this Islanders team's off to a fantastic start. This Islanders team leading the way in the division, in the Maritimes division, and really just a lot of it to do with the steady goaltending they've gotten out of Hickey. We were talking about it before the show, and I asked you because I genuinely didn't really believe it, but he's played pretty much all of their games so far this season. 10-2 record on the season, 2.61 GAA, and a 907 save percentage. Obviously, the offense has been good for this team, but definitely leading the way with their great goaltending.
We've been talking about the Mooseheads goaltending all season, but Brisson and Circa sit 15, 16 respectively in the league in those stats, and neither of them are above 800 in the save percentage. So to get a guy like Donald Hickey, this is only his second year in the league, so he's been having an outstanding season compared to his stats last season. One thing I'd like to know about Donald Hickey is his blade tape. I've said this before. He's got green, white, and gold blade tape on his stick. Most goalies don't do that. I'd like to know if there's anything behind that. So if you know, drop it in the comments. But the Mooseheads are going to need to find a way to get past Hickey, and it isn't looking too easy. He's not the biggest goalie, but he's able to move inside the crease, and his IQ is pretty good. So if you combine those things with a goaltender that has a team in front of him, it's going to be kind of tough for the Mooseheads.
And I think that you and I have talked a lot about the back-to-backs and the home and homes, how we're seeing more of that this season in the queue. But I think that this particular matchup against an elite team is probably one of those ones where I think it's good for Brad McKenzie and the coaching staff because, like I said, the players might get bored of it from a coaching perspective. Let's just say that they do drop game one and they do get a chance to go home for game two. You get to look at some film. You get to go over a few things. And I'm not saying that coaches will change a ton of things from one night to the next, but it's almost a good learning moment to be able to play that same team the next night. And if they do have success on Friday night, then it's like, okay, let's replicate it. Let's play better defensively. Let's try and look at things differently. One thing I'm going to say, you just talked about it. I mean, trying to beat Hickey is going to be very difficult, but I always talk about it in my betting industry about, first game back at home after a road trip is always a tough one. Well, this actually isn't first game back at home because they're still on the road trip, but it's back in the Maritimes, we'll call it here. It can be tricky. And although this Mooseheads team didn't exactly come out on top in their last game there against Val-d'Or, they scored a ton of goals. And we talked about it on our previous show with the weekend recap. They scored 7 against Blainville, 4 against Rouyn-Noranda, and 4 against Val-d'Or. So this is a team that's putting up goals, but it might not be that simple in this matchup. So how do you think the Mooseheads can fare in a game that might be low scoring?
Oh yeah, you just mentioned it. They're still not done that road trip. They are going to be on the road, but I did actually see. I tuned into a game on High Button earlier, and before that game started, it was in the Mooseheads practice facility, and they were out there screwing around. So they have been home. They have been assimilated to the environment back here in the Maritimes, but that Charlottetown team can score. And we mentioned it last week. You probably don't want to be losing games if you're scoring like 4 or 5 goals. But I think the Mooseheads might be in a similar situation this week where they go over to Charlottetown, and even if they put up 4 or 5, the Islanders team can also put up 4 or 5 goals very easily. So yeah, it might be a little bit of a scoring duel, but a defensive matchup might be in favor of the coaching staff here. They might be a little bit more pleased with that outcome than a 6-5 or a 5-4 game.
Yeah, I look forward to seeing how this Mooseheads team handles Charlottetown defensively. Just looking at this Islanders team overall, I mean, some of the games that they've played, they not only have put up goals though, but just been able to keep the score low on the other side of things. Especially their home record. I personally, Dayton, I like the fact that the home game for the Moose is the second game. I think it's better. And knock on wood, look, I hope they win both games, but I do think that it's a nice feeling that hey, if they don't come out on top in game one, they can learn something from that and go home to the home crowd. And if you're a young team, we know how great it is playing at the Scotiabank Center. You will get that boost. They haven't been home in a little while. A handful of games on the road in Quebec as well. Another Quebec road trip coming up towards the end of the month. So these home games do matter.
Yeah, especially if you get two teams. You've beat them before at home. Charlottetown this weekend on the Saturday, and then next weekend going to Moncton. So two teams that you've had success with, but two good teams at that. So still two good tests for the Mooseheads before they go on to a Quebec road trip where you're hitting the east side of Quebec where the teams aren't as strong. You still get Chicoutimi in there, but other than that, I think this will be a good test before a little bit of a wind. I shouldn't even say a wind down of a road trip because you don't want to wind down ever, but uh I think the viewers know what I'm trying to say here. It'll be a little bit of an easier task on paper.
Well, we look forward to seeing what the Halifax Mooseheads can bring. And hey, if they do have to get into an offensive shootout, as you mentioned, hopefully they can beat Hickey and they keep putting goals up on the board because this team looks like about as consistent as it gets offensively. It's just about managing things in their own defensive side of things. You know who this Mooseheads team kind of reminds me of in the NHL right now? It's a little bit like the San Jose Sharks. It's a little bit
Okay.
like the Chicago Blackhawks. And I hope they end up having a better season than those two teams are about to have, probably. But they've got that young talent. They're winning high scoring games. They're losing in high scoring games, but they're a very fun team to watch. Like there hasn't been a lot of situations where people have paid to go watch the Halifax Mooseheads play yet, and they've left being like, oh man, that was a very low event game. Like every game this Mooseheads team they play is very exciting so far.
100%. And I think that's just the fact that you get a young team and most people didn't expect them to do this. And then they come out of the woodwork and they're putting up a 10 and 2, no, nine and 4, I believe now
Hmm.
because they took that loss the other day, but still a great record. They might be 10 and 4 over the weekend. I'll have to check that. But yeah, the Mooseheads record is something that fans didn't really expect. And I don't know, for a young team to come out and do something like this, it's always special. And especially when you have a home crowd, like we talk about all the time, supporting this Mooseheads team. It's something that's pretty special in junior hockey, and you don't get very often in other places other than Halifax.
We've been talking about Oleg Kulibiak multiple times on the show, and you were talking to me before that we went live here just about really the rankings that he had going into the season, but now what the thoughts have just been absolutely elevated since all this stuff he's been doing so far this early into the season, and now he's being recognized by the league.
Yeah, so 3 weeks ago or so, like when he went to the prospect game in Sherbrooke, they released or the NHL Central Scouting released their mid-season or quarter season draft rankings, and Kulibiakin was like a F, not an F, but like they do it in like letters. So like he was like a G to F like rank like rating, and that's like fifth to seventh round. And I'm sitting here thinking like this guy's tied for third in goals in the
Yeah.
league. He's a Russian kid that's come in and absolutely taken over. And I don't know, it's just something's gonna change here soon. He was also nominated as Player of the Week or Prospect of the Week for this year's upcoming draft in the queue. So I don't know. I just think I see good things ahead in the future for Oleg Kulibiakin. He's a fan favorite too, and the fans love him. So it's
I'm
always on
excited
his
to watch.
side.
Yeah, and you know what? Not afraid of the big moment either. Tying games, winning games for this Mooseheads team. So we'll see. We'll have you guys updated. We'll have a weekend recap, and we'll let you guys know. Look forward to going in deep with this home and home because, as much as we do like variety and looking at different matchups, it is kind of cool being able to dissect the same head-to-head matchup twice and see kind of how they've done. One thing we have seen in the home and home so far, or in times where the Mooseheads have played the same team twice in a short period of time, we've seen two different types of games. Either it's a flat spot, or it's a really high energy spot, or a low scoring and then a high event game. So I'm very curious to see if we end up seeing that again. Like, put it this way, I was giving them flowers for in their Quebec road trip. Even when they lost, they were losing with pride. I want both of these games to be very competitive. Is that kind of a soft way of putting things? I want them to win both games, but I think I want them to hang around in both games here. Let's have a good effort in both nights, not just one.
Like the coach would say, full 60 minutes, but let's make it a full 120 minutes.
Yeah, yeah.
Hopefully, they can get things done in regulation, not like the. I was actually driving home last night. I was listening to the Habs game, and I was like, man, if you're playing the Habs, you're at least getting a point out of it because all their games go to right or overtime. So as long as the Mooseheads can like not pull the Habs kind of trick this season and just get things done in regulation, they'll be good. Sticking around for a full 60 is good, but they got to stay out of the penalty box. That's something that they've kind of had troubles with this season.
Don't get me started on the Habs. That team is just driving me crazy. It's almost like they're getting too confident already. They're such a good team; they don't need to play a full 60, according to them. All right, let's switch over to the AUS and look at some finals here. The Loney Bowl, St. FX X-Men visiting the St. Mary's Huskies at Husky Stadium. Taking a look at our good friends at CoolBet. Always a great spot to look at for the odds. They've got the Huskies heavily favored, and it's pretty cool to see, not during the regular season, but during the playoffs, sportsbooks are putting out odds and lines on these games here. -7. So getting the touchdown, no hook there, but -7 favorites for the St. Mary's Huskies, total at 44.5. So, hey, we're going to get a little bit of betting talk going on this show. We'll find out, but we have looked at this game and kind of created a mindset of this. Hey, we've got one team that's just off an absolute easy game. They could walk through the second half, and one team that was off a game that was in more or less walk-off fashion. So I guess the question here is, does it benefit the St. FX X-Men that they actually had to play a real game last week? Or does it benefit the St. Mary's Huskies that it was pretty much a walkthrough for them against the Acadia Axemen? What do you think here? I know you're an Acadia guy, sort of, but we got to say, I mean, that wasn't exactly the most excruciating game for the St. Mary's Huskies.
Unfortunately, the hometown team kind of took a beating, but I'm going to go to a word that my radio instructor from last year absolutely hates. Sorry, Ray Williams, but it's all about momentum. And whichever team kind of gained the more momentum off of whichever way their game ended. I don't know if you would say St. Mary's, their blowout gave them more momentum, or if you're like coming down to the wire, you're biting your nails, you're St. FX, you make the kick and you walk it off. Is that more momentum swinging? It really comes down to that. In my mind, like you said, there's also some weather implications, but it's momentum. Sometimes there's a right place for that word, and I think this is the right place. Playoffs, finals, it's just whoever comes up and is ready to play in the big moment, and whichever team has some big moment stars.
Look, we've seen two meetings between these teams so far this year. One team won one team won the other. I just mentioned that St. Mary's on CoolBet are 7-point favorites, but the total being at 44 here, I like the under. One matchup landed on 37 points. One matchup landed on 36 points. Now we're talking about a rainy day in Halifax, heavy winds, and playoff implications, not to mention that this St. Mary's Huskies team is a heavy running team. This is a team that relies almost more on their rushing game than it actually does on their passing game, it feels like. Maybe that's because of some inflated numbers due to not really needing to pass the ball against Acadia and some other teams. But if I'm betting this one, I'm looking towards the under. I think that we're going to see more of a battle, more of a defensive game. And if the weather is any implication with wind, with rain, that could help us get more field goals or more punts or more sloppiness as it is. But you know what? You talked about momentum. Our good friend Mo, and I think that we are going to see St. FX compete here because St. FX has proven they can beat St. Mary's 20-17 win back on September 20th. So towards the early part of the season, they can compete against this Huskies team. They battled against Bishops. They put up a ton of points against them. And I just feel like when you walk through a team like St. Mary's did with Acadia, it's not as easy to just, flip that switch, even though the quote you brought up on our last podcast about the St. Mary's players that are heavily motivated going into this one, it's not going to be easy. So I do think we get a tight game, but I do think St. Mary's comes out on top. Talent willing. This team is so strong. The position players seem to have the edge, and overall, they've got multiple backs. I mean, their running game is so strong that that will make the difference, especially if weather ends up playing a factor. But if anybody out there plans on going to this game, or if you had no clue that you could even bet on this game, I'm here to tell you that I think the under is the way to go. And honestly, I would look towards betting +7 on St. FX. I really would. You can get -115, +7 for St. FX. Cool Bet has the offer, has the odds for you guys. I think that's the way to go. I do think this one's going to be closer. And I think that this number is the way it is because of recency bias.
You just mentioned the possibility of it being a closer game, a little bit of a more defensive style game. The weather might have some implications on that. And with it being the final game, our team's going to be run and gun with that offense right out of the gate, or are they going to be waiting up to stop? We saw Malik Williams, the quote he had last week, talking about momentum, saw his performance last week. He's a big running juggernaut. And if he's getting all those rushing yards, and St. Mary's has to switch up their game style, St. FX might have some tape on him. They might have been like they've had a week to scout. They've had a whole season to scout. There's only 5 teams in the league. They're pretty familiar with this team. So they might be going, hey, they know, or we know this guy's going to rush a lot, but they might have to switch up their game style. This might be in St. FX's favor, but I guess we'll have to wait for Saturday to see.
Well, we look forward to watching the game, breaking things down. Make sure you tap in with us on social media, Halifax Sports Talk, HFX Sports Talk. We'll keep you guys posted on the results, on the games overall. And, of course, on our Monday show, we'll recap the game, recap the weekend with the Mooseheads head-to-head matchups against the Islanders. And, of course, the Loney Bowl with the Huskies and the X-Men. But, Dayton, we're wishing you a great weekend in Toronto as well. Best of luck with your announcing. And we hope all of you enjoy the games and have a great weekend as well. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.